Lamar Jackson silenced his haters again, and he didn't even have to lift a finger to do it.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Ravens. Welcome in to the show. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire. On today's show, a Ravens center trade was proposed by a reporter that I find really intriguing, so I want to dive into that in the second part of the show. It's kind of made the rounds a little bit as well, so I want to dive into that conversation. But in the first part of the show, Lamar Jackson, he silenced his haters again, didn't even have to do anything to silence them except show up to the Ravens OTAs, which is what happened on Tuesday. A triumphant return once again for Lamar. Yes, he was not there for Baltimore's first week of OTAs, but we knew he was there for the beginning of the offseason workout program, and he was back on Tuesday. The Ravens showed the video of him trotting out on the football field. There are some clips of him throwing to rookie wide receivers, Jacoby Lane and Elijah Surratt, and this is just, all I can really do is laugh because these narratives that can continue to be built around Lamar Jackson in an absence or two when, we don't really know what happened or what's going on with Lamar. Maybe tomorrow Lamar will speak to the media and, he'll be asked about it and maybe he'll share, maybe he won't. But that's kind of what Jesse Minter's message was, is that, they're in communication, the team understands, he understands what's going on. They have an expectation of when he'll be back. And that's really all I needed to know. And even if Lamar didn't decide to show up again, it is voluntary, but I actually have to, I'm going to do quick research here because let me look if Justin Herbert, who has also been absent from OTAs, he's been traveling, I think. Herbert's been traveling. And I don't know if he was at OTAs on Tuesday. I'm trying to find it, but I'll figure out if I can find it or not later. But it's kind of like the narratives where Herbert actually began to get a little bit of flack for not being there. But, this has been a consistent thing with Lamar where even if he misses a day or two of something or something, everything is magnified with Lamar. So, to all those people, analysts, whoever it may be, who were waiting to see if Lamar is going to show up and they had their pieces ready. Oh, Lamar's not there again this week. What does that mean? Oh, is Lamar unhappy? Oh, Lamar's not working. No, he's out. He's showing up. He's doing his thing. There was never a doubt here. And I'm very glad he was able to be out there on that football field with his teammates working. Some of the clips we saw, Lamar, and Declan Doyle chopping it up and Lamar getting coached up by Declan Doyle a little bit and them having a conversation. So it's really the exciting part here. And some of the unknowns that we have here at this Baltimore team with kind of where they are, it's a feeling out period. And that's going to continue, by the way, all throughout the rest of the offseason and probably into the regular season as this team just kind of learns how to play with the new coaching staff, as these new players come in and continue to learn about each other and continue to deepen their relationships with one another. That's a big thing on the field and off the field. It feels like there's a really big emphasis on both. Hey, we're going to work, we're going to have a great day of practice, do the thing, but also there is that camaraderie sense. And Jesse Minter even talked about that with the joint practices. We had a conversation about that yesterday on Locked On Ravens PM. So, there's just so much here, in my opinion, that gives me confidence. And, from Lamar, I guess from the Lamar perspective in general, we know the player that he is. He's an incredible quarterback and one of the best, if not the best in the league. To me, him putting in the work, him setting a tone again, it's a huge deal. But people want to run with a narrative of, oh, well, why does Lamar, because I saw it was, I think from Jason McIntyre, I believe, who the clip itself was why does Lamar get a pass and Jalen Hurts doesn't? I'm trying to find it. Yeah, why is Lamar escaping criticism and Jalen Hurts a punching bag? What criticism has Lamar escaped? Where's that narrative coming from? So I don't really understand that part of it. Lamar is highly scrutinized, undeservedly so. Again, I'm more than willing to have conversations about when Lamar makes a bad throw or has a bad game or does something. There is reason with it. Lamar's not completely free of all criticism if he does something bad. We have criticized Lamar when he has had bad games or had bad throws or whatnot, but it's these narratives that continue to pop up about him where it's like all of a sudden Lamar Jackson walking out onto the practice field is like the biggest story in football on Tuesday because, oh, look, Lamar's back. Well, how did it get to that point? Is because people have made it get to that point where people are attendance watching Lamar Jackson. Mike Florio, we talked about this last week. Mike Florio's pocket watching Lamar Jackson with the $750,000 workout bonus. He has to attend I think 80% of the workouts or whatnot, or the programs, to be able to be eligible for that. He has not done that the past 2 years. But again, we're just it's putting Lamar under a microscope continuously for things where it's I'm all game for criticizing players when they don't have good games or when they don't live up to the standard. But Lamar absolutely has lived up to the standard. His year was poor from Lamar standards last year because of a lot of other circumstances. Was Lamar perfect? No, but he also was injured. He had a poor offensive line. There's other conversations that go into that. But, now we just have little things that pop up. And, the biggest example of this, actually, it came from the Mike Florio clip that we talked about last week, but it honestly came from Chris Sims, who, when Lamar wasn't at OTAs, he started bringing up, oh, well, I've heard people around the league are still wondering, they still expect Lamar to end up in Miami, or it was something along those lines. And just bringing up trade conversation about Lamar again. How does one thing like that spark that conversation? One absence when we don't even know what's going on. We don't even know what's going on. So I don't know if Lamar's going to speak on it, but again, this is kind of the annual, honestly, it's sometimes a weekly or monthly thing with Lamar where he just doesn't show up to something or something happens and we don't have context behind why. And then everybody just jumps on him of oh, Lamar this, Lamar that. And then he just shows up and everyone's oh, well, wasn't expecting that. Well, why? Why were you not expecting it? I don't understand it. But again, there's a lot of excitement around this team this season, and the work they're putting in as a whole, the buy-in that I feel like the coaching staff has from the players, that's a big goal that Jesse Minter and the coaching staff had based off of many of his answers and the coaching staff's answers before. And to be able to have that buy-in so early, especially for a team that is as talented as Baltimore. And we know there were fatal flaws with John Harbaugh, Todd Monken, Zach Orr that were just staring us in the face. They were just staring us in the face. And to kind of have at least the weight of that lifted off of my shoulders personally in terms of not having to worry about those as much, if not ever anymore. Blowing fourth quarter leads. Is Jesse Minter's team going to ever blow a fourth quarter lead? I'm sure it's going to happen. It's just, you can't be perfect in those situations. Unfortunately, I'd love it. But it's not all going to be sunshine and rainbows and everything's perfect. But the way in which it was happening with Harbaugh, you look at the offense, Monken having spells of greatness and then spells of just what are we doing here? It was inconsistent. Zach Orr just wasn't ready, in my opinion. And it's no disrespect to Zach Orr. He just wasn't ready, in my opinion. So, there's a lot of different things that happened, but the refreshing nature that the coaching staff has brought, the players buying into that refreshing nature, it is all coming together, in my opinion, for the Baltimore Ravens. And we no longer have to do the is Lamar going to show up thing anymore because he is there. He is at OTAs, voluntary OTAs, by the way. He doesn't have to be there, but he's there. And that further cements the buy-in that he has and that I think the message he is sending to his teammates about, hey, let's go do this thing overall. So I'm curious to hear what the attendance will be tomorrow. I believe the media will be there tomorrow, so we'll have some insight on that. Coming up in the second part of the show, we'll be diving into a Ravens center trade proposal that I think is very interesting. It's been making the rounds a little bit as well. So stay tuned when it's coming up on the show. First, the show is brought to you by Square. Support for today's episode comes from Square, the system that helps fix one of the biggest headaches in running a business. Starting a business is exciting, but actually running it, that's where things can get complicated fast. Payments, inventory, staff scheduling, online orders. It's a lot to manage. That's why Square brings everything together into one connected system. Square helps you take payments, track sales, manage inventory, and keep your business running smoothly without juggling a bunch of disconnected tools. One thing I've noticed is some of my favorite local spots is how seamless everything feels when they use Square. Check out as quick receipts are easy, and the whole experience just feels more organized. If you're starting a business or running one that deserves better tools, Square helps you sell, manage, and grow without slowing down. Right now, you can get up to $200 off Square hardware at square.com/go/LockedOnNFL. That's SQUARE.com/GO/LockedOnNFL. Run your business smarter with Square. Get started today. Moving along, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still here with you on this Tuesday, Locked On Ravens PM edition of the show. Thanks so much for being here and making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day, now the #1 sports podcast network. We have 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage and content for you. Monday through Friday, twice a day, 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. Eastern time. And of course, we also have bonus episodes, instant reactions, watch-alongs, the squad show, and the Everyday Club for some extra add-on content. So if you want some extra add-on content, links in the description down below, as well as on the Locked On Ravens page on the Locked On website. Center position. It's been a very big talking point for this Baltimore Ravens team, and one that I think a lot of people are kind of curious about, because that's the one position on the offensive line that everyone is wondering, all right, who's going to be the starter on the roster right now? We got Danny Pinter, Javon Gwen, Corey Bullock, Nick Dawkins. So there are a lot of in-house options, but there has been the point raised by Eric DeCosta, as well as just a lot of people, that could they go out there, make a trade? Could they go out there, sign somebody? Is it a cap casualty? Like, there are a lot of different conversations that are being had there. Well, Brady Henderson, who is the Seahawks reporter over at ESPN, he proposed an interesting, or I guess it's a conversation about the Seahawks and the state of their situation right now coming off their Super Bowl championship. And one of the points he made, he said the question was another trade up Schneider's sleeve. And he said one potential trade candidate to watch this summer will be center Oluwatimi, who is the 2023 fifth-round pick entering his final year of his rookie contract and is slated to, again, back up Jalen Sundle, who beat him out for the job last summer. Now, he mentions the Seahawks don't seem determined to move him, but did mention the Baltimore Ravens could potentially make sense as a trade partner. So, I don't know. It's interesting, but there was the situation that Henderson brought up that if they traded him, it would guarantee they get something, maybe someone to fill a depth need, or maybe something else, a draft pick, where if they let him walk after next year and he doesn't do anything, there wouldn't be any guarantee of them getting a comp pick for him. So it depends on kind of how they feel about him. Now, Oluwatimi is interesting, I guess is what I'll say about him. I mean, he ended up starting 13 games in his career so far. He definitely graded out poorly in 2025. PFF gave him 55.9 grade last season, which for context ranked 35th out of 40 eligible centers. Now, obviously, there is the Michigan connection with him and Jesse Minter, that whole thing going on. But, I mean, at the same time, this is kind of where my conversation about the center position goes. And, you know, when you're looking at where Baltimore is right now, you have options. Are they Tyler Linderbaum level options? No, they are not Tyler Linderbaum level options. But you do have talent there. If one guy really impresses or is starting to impress, you don't need to make a trade for anybody. Now, if you feel like those guys aren't going to do enough and you feel like you really need somebody else in there, I'm totally cool with them bringing in somebody. Like, I absolutely am okay with them bringing in somebody. And by the way, Oluwatimi and Minter were together at Michigan. You know, obviously it was the college thing, but they were together because Oluwatimi transferred. He moved around a little bit in college. So he ended up being at Michigan in 2022 when Minter was there. That was his first year in Michigan, Minter's first year. But a trade for Oluwatimi is not moving a needle for me, right? And, you know, there's the Maryland connection with Oluwatimi too, which is exciting, but, you know, that doesn't really have any bearing on whether he'd be a good fit for Baltimore or not. I mean, obviously, if you have a center that you don't really need on your roster and you're looking to trade him, Baltimore's the obvious destination here. So, you know, we've heard Garrett Bradbury be floated, some other names potentially be floated. But in reality, like, is it worth giving up let's just say a 5th round pick for a guy that maybe is 2% better potentially than Danny Pinter would be, or Gwen, or whoever it would be? Those are the things you have to weigh if you're Eric DeCosta. And, you know, right now, at least, the Ravens, I'm sure, just want to see things play out. You know, from what Dwayne Ledford has said, John Simpson's made some comments, Minter, like, feels like they're having a competition within the competition. I wouldn't expect them to do anything probably before training camp. If it gets to training camp, you're like a couple weeks in, you're like, okay, this is getting crazy. Then maybe you make a trade, or you could do it before training camp because you don't want to wait too long to make a deal. But, the longer that this kind of goes on, I honestly just feel like the center's on the roster. And look, you've elevated the guard positions enough. Like, it's a conversation we've had a bunch here, and I know some people are tired of it, but like, is the conversation of you have already built up the guard spots. You have elevated that guard play. So yes, your center is not going to be as good as Linderbaum was. Like, it just is what it is. I know Linderbaum had some limitations, but he is one of the best centers in the NFL, right? He is. You're not going to get that this season from your center spot unless you somehow trade for somebody that's better than Linderbaum. There aren't a lot of names, in my opinion, that are better than Linderbaum. So you've done the job of, if you know one position's going to be less, I guess, consistent is maybe a word I'd put this year, then you have to do it at the other spots. You have to elevate. And I think that with Ioane and Simpson, you're doing that. And Linderbaum had to deal with a lot at that center spot last year, right? I mean, he was playing next to Daniel Falele and Andrew Voorhees for the entire year, which, I mean, he was doing 3 jobs at once, I think. Like, it was rough. So to me, you could make a deal for a center. I'm not sure Oluwatimi is the guy that I would make the deal for. But you have to be sure that like, if you're trading for somebody just to come in and be like your third center, that makes no sense to me. Like, it would have to be someone that you would have be your starting center, like unquestioned. Hey, we're trading a 5th round pick. We're bringing in, say, Garrett Bradbury, for example. He's the guy. That's the type of move I would make at center. So it's an intriguing conversation. I think it's probably 50-50 to me whether they actually do make a move or not. But I wouldn't be shocked if the center's just on the roster and they decide to go with it that way. And, maybe they can evaluate in season. And that's a little difficult because offensive linemen don't really get traded during the season because everybody needs them and no one wants to give them up. So I feel if you got to make a move, it's probably got to be soon. So we'll see how it all unfolds there. But that's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. On the web, sure to like and subscribe button in video form and follow along and subscribe in audio form for 5 days a week, plus more of daily Ravens coverage and content coming up. We'll be back here tomorrow morning with our regularly scheduled 6 a.m. programming. So be sure to stay tuned. I'll see you right back here soon on Locked On Ravens.